For Bret Hart to be able to beat Roddy Piper is massive. We've already spoken on this podcast before. Piper didn't do the job for anyone. He didn't do the job for Hogan. Piper just wouldn't put people over. He did it for Bret Hart. Now, regardless of whether that was a personal choice, and I'm sure it was, I can't imagine Vince would have just been able to tell him to do it. The point is that this showed an incredible amount of faith in WWE on WWE's part, at the very least, in what they thought of Bret Hart. It's a match for the Intercontinental title. Piper's going in as champion, and he loses to Bret Hart by pinfall after just under 19 minutes when Piper clamps on the sleeper hold, and Bret Hart obviously jumps up onto the turnbuckle, pushes himself off, and pins Piper as Piper continues to hold him in the sleeper hold. For me, match of the night. It was a match that I was not expecting to like as much as I did, because I had previously not enjoyed it as much as this. This was I enjoyed this far more than I have previously, having watched it, and it feels really significant looking at it now as a really, really major moment, because again, Piper just didn't do this, and Piper was a genuine massive star, genuinely a massive star. He obviously went and, I assume, agreed or even elected to lose to Bret Hart cleanly in the middle of the ring. There was no kind of interference either. It wasn't a kind of cheap finish. Yeah, I thought it was really good. I thought it was great how Piper was wrestling with his demons, only the way Piper can, because Piper always has kind of treaded that line between being a heel and a babyface. There were moments of slight technical inaccuracy, and there were a couple of botches here and there in this one, but it didn't detract from me that much. And I think previously it probably did detract from me more, whereas this time I got a bit more swept up in the actual story of the match.
I was actually expecting a little bit more from what I've heard about it previously. It's supposed to be quite a celebrated, really good match, and it definitely was good. Not going to say it was bad by any stretch. It was definitely a good match, but I actually had higher expectations for this one, and it didn't quite live up to them for me. I can't say that I quite noticed I wasn't really a fan at the time, so I suppose it's harder in a way for me to appreciate how big of a deal it would have been for Piper to put Bret over. There were things in the match that I did like. This definitely was the best Roddy Piper match that I've ever seen. I'll definitely say that. But I don't know what it was. I don't know. It lacked something. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it didn't feel as important to me as perhaps it could have been. So it was just lacking that little bit.
I think that was my reaction to it in previous watches, Matt. I think I've always thought, this has got a massive reputation. It doesn't live up to it. And for some reason this time I felt like it kind of got closer to matching up to it.
The other way.
But maybe because my expectations were much lower. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've got a bit of a strange relationship with this match, if that's how you would describe it, in that this is the match that turned me into a Bret Hart guy. This was the one that made me, I was like, this guy's amazing. I love it. But when I think of great Bret Hart matches, I don't think of this. It's not even in the top 10. I think like Canadian Stampede, Austin, Owen 2, even like the Montreal match, like even though I hate the way it ended, I'd still think of that as higher. Like there's so many matches involving Bret Hart that I think of, even like the Survivor Series 90 match where he loses when The Undertaker makes his debut and he loses, I think of before I think of this match. And I think a large portion of that is because I am not a big fan of Roddy Piper. So that might be part of the reason why I don't ever think of this match as being one of the good ones. So like Tinky, I went into this match being like, well, it's a Bret Hart match. I know it's going to be good, and I know it's my guy, and I'm going to enjoy it, and I know what I'm going to get from it. But I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, and this is why it's my match of the night as well. I've got to give some credit to Piper though, because Piper plays his role particularly well. I really like the bit where he, like you said, where he's battling with his demons. Is he going to hit Bret with the ring bell? He would do that against anyone else, but he can't bring himself to do it in this match. Like you said, Tinky, he's always been a beloved baby in the WWF, especially after like WrestleMania 2, always been a beloved babyface who will cheat and do the nasty stuff. And I really like that he couldn't do it in this match. Piper is in tremendous shape as well. Probably the best shape I think I've ever seen him in. And it's got to be said, I like that Intercontinental belt on Roddy Piper. It looks good. He carries it well. And but what I also remember about this, and this has come back to me actually. So I had the Roddy Piper figure, and I could always remember getting really annoyed that he's not wearing the white Hot Rod t-shirt when he comes down to the ring, because that's what's on the action figure. He's wearing the black one, but that's a glorious shirt as well. This match is a lot better than I remember. Like I said, match of the night. Bret's doing all of his Bret Hart tropes. He's playing possum in this as well, which obviously Gorilla Monsoon kind of notices a lot. The kind of unorthodox finish I love. which again, you just don't seem to. I kind of don't want to be one of those guys like, oh, well, back in my day. But no one seems to win a match unless they hit their finisher anymore. And I love the fact that you could have these matches. We talk about like this match, you talk about like we spoke about Steamboat Savage, which has got like a small package. You don't really get that much these days anymore, at least in WWE. I can't speak for other promotions, where someone wins with a move that isn't their finisher. And I just like that because it adds that element of unpredictability to matches. And I think that like Bret as a wrestler was probably one of the best at thinking of creative ways to win a match. And again, I think that's another reason why I'm such a fan of his. Brilliant. Bret's in all pink, lovely stuff. He blades. He gets busted open, adds a little bit of colour to the match, adds a little bit of intensity to it. I think this is great, a great match.
Nearly all of his big matches end in some form of maneuver rather than having done the big move or got the sharpshooter on someone. And there are not many wrestling matches I can remember from this last couple of years where that happens. Like, it does tend to be big move, count, kick out, massive move, impossible to kick out of pin. You know what I mean? Whereas Bret's matches didn't necessarily have those big moves and big kickouts. It was more a small package kick out, then kind of a roll up into the victory or something like that. It feels more realistic to me, if I'm honest, than the big move style, because I can imagine, like, again, going to MMA, I can't imagine each fighter has got a special move that they use. I mean, they probably got favored submissions or favored, maneuvers that they go for, but they haven't got like, oh, this guy's going to do a super power bomb type thing. It just didn't track. You win however you can. Now, wrestling allows you to do that a bit more smoothly, so you can do it so it looks more intricate, because obviously you don't have to kind of muscle your opponent into that position. They'll just allow you to do it. But that makes those matches feel more real, because you're like, well, Piper could have just let go of the sleeper, but he didn't, because he thought he could still get the victory if Bret, if he could hold on to Bret for long enough. And also, it doesn't make it's Piper losing clean, but it doesn't make Piper diminished in any way. It's not like he's a worse fighter. He just got, again, outthought on this particular occasion, but that doesn't necessarily mean it would happen every time. It's just that it shows Bret Hart to be this sort of master tactician rather than the strongest guy in the world, which is what it kind of has become now, is who's the strongest, who can hit the highest impact move, rather than who can maneuver themselves into a wrestling victory.
I think a lot of it is, and not just WWE, but I think wrestling's sort of perspective on wrestlers using submissions as a finish has always been a bit of a weird sort of relationship. Like, you don't see that when you compare them to pinfalls, a guy beating a guy clean with his move. You don't see that many submissions, like, say, like with a guy using a special submission or whatever. It's not that common, and I don't know why. And I think they should do it more. I don't know if it's because in wrestling that the powers that be tend to think that it'll hurt them more, by who they gave up. But thinking of it from an MMA perspective, as an example, I mean, people tap out to submissions all the time, but then they'll just come back in the interview and afterwards just go, look, it happens, I got caught, better man won, and that's it. You move on.
Sorry, Matt. I guess the difference is that MMA fighters tend to have like 2, 3, 4 fights a year, whereas wrestlers are fighting like once a week at least.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that might work.
But also, I think that does feed into what we're saying here, is that what those MMA fighters are saying is, I got caught. Wrestling doesn't really work that way. Wrestlers don't come out of it and go, like in this match, Piper could come out and say, what are you going to do? I thought I had him in a sleeper. I thought he would go out before he got the 3. It didn't happen, and he got the pin. Fair play to him. But in the main, wrestling doesn't work like that. It's we've got to create an issue between these two people, for example. Also, we can't have the drama of a submission being on if someone can get caught, if that makes any sense. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
if in MMA, if you get caught, you pretty much tap out within seconds, don't you? Whereas in wrestling, you tend to draw out that drama of the submission hold, because you want to give the impression that the person might be able to escape over time. So there's just a little bit of a difference there, isn't there?
For me, it's something I'd like to see them use more often, because there's been a number of examples of guys over the years who've added a submission to their game to try and give that different sort of finish. I mean, the Undertaker famously with adding Hell's Gate. Roman Reigns added the guillotine for a small period of time. He doesn't tend to use it that often now, but going to a submission sort of finish, I think would be a good way of changing things up.
It's interesting you focused on the submission part, because I focus on the pinfall side of it more. Like, there just aren't enough people getting those caught. You can do the caught thing with a pinfall in wrestling, because there are so many ways to pin someone.
Yeah.
And it works because I think that with the submission one, there's a sense of, in MMA, it's accepted that if you get caught in a really nasty armbar or choke or whatever, you can't stand up to it. No matter who you are, you can't stand up to it. But in wrestling, there's this sort of fantasy world of, actually, if you don't stand up to it, what does that say about you? That means you're a little bit weak. And certainly, I feel a little bit almost the opposite to you, Matt, and it may be because I've been brought up in the world of WWF when nobody who was a babyface submitted to anything. Yeah. Certainly not any valuable babyface. So, for example, Bret, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels when he was a babyface, none of them ever submitted and would ever submit. It was only sort of early 2000s and onwards when you started to see it a little bit creep in.
Yeah,
and
I think of Rey Mysterio tapping out the ankle lock, stuff like that. Yeah,
and that always jars with me a little bit, because I'm like, that's not what I've been brought up to believe in with a babyface. But I'm not saying that that's right. It's just how I've been conditioned having watched wrestling. So I'm a little bit of the other side to you. But I guess if you had a universe, a wrestling promotion where they said, look, actually, submissions, if you get caught, you're done.
Yeah.
And they just built that into their logic over time, I probably could get on board with it, but I'm not sure WWE could do it, for example.
Yeah.
Going back to this match for a minute, I think you're right, Tom. Piper is very, very good in this match. This match is not, for me, about the technical quality of it, although there's plenty on show from Bret. The snap suplex that he does where they both... I just love that snap. It's just absolutely
so
gorgeous.
good. I was watching it, I was like, they're both off the ground for ages. It's tremendous. Best snap suplex in the game.
But it's this match is, for me, really good more because of the story they tell. Like, they have a little interview before the match where they kind of build a little bit of tension between them, a little bit of needle, nothing with any real side, but just a little bit of needle.
It's Piper being patronising, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, so he's there being like, I remember, and he's like saying like how he's like, he remembers like being at Stu's house and seeing him as a kid eating his peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and he's not being horrible, but he's just being a bit patronising, annoying. And what I really like about this, people say Bret Hart's not a great pro man. At this stage in his career, he's not amazing. But what they do really well is that basically it is like, no, let Piper do his thing. You just come in, play the complete straight man to it, and be like, yeah, well, I'm going to beat you for the Intercontinental title sort of thing. And that's it, because Piper just goes off in the promo as well.
And they introduce this little bit of needle, then they have the sort of stare down in the ring beforehand, kind of push each other back and forth. And slowly Piper gets frustrated because Bret's out wrestling him and he can't do anything about it. So Piper starts to resort to sort of more cheap tactics and starts to bring the sort of brawling side of it into the thing. And then, of course, Bret blades, and you get down to the bit where Piper's got the bell and he finally kind of draws back and decides that he can do it, chucks it down, but puts the sleeper on, which is Piper's move anyway. And then Bret Hart manages to counter it. It's just that as a story, for me, is just brilliant. It's just unbeatable stuff. So there are some technical issues. There's a bit where they kind of do a crossbody and they don't quite get it right, and they have to kind of almost work their way over the rope in a kind of awkward way. But I just could forgive it this time because I thought the story would just work so well.